Hi everyone, this is Goomzilla, and welcome to Make Your Own Boo Plush. This has been a long-awaited tutorial since Luigi's Quest Part 4, and I'm excited to finally be sharing it with everyone. For this tutorial, you'll need felt in colours white, red, pink, and black. Scissors. I'd also recommend some sharp nail scissors, as they'll be helpful for cutting out some of the smaller pieces. A needle, pins, thread in colours white and black, and stuffing. So you'll first need to cut out all of the pieces from the template. Then you'll cut out the felt pieces. The number and colour is indicated on the template. I'll start by sewing the front edges of the boo together by sewing from this corner to this corner and this corner to this corner, not sewing up the gap here as this is where the mouth will go. I'll first cast on by going into this edge of the two pieces. Hold the tail end tight and go in and out a few times. When I'm satisfied that this is tight enough, I'm going to use a blanket stitch. I'll give a quick demo here. I go into the next bit of felt along and wrap the thread already connected to the felt around the needle and push the needle through. I'll show you again a few times. Once this is done, I'll cast off by going into the last stitch again a few times. When I'm satisfied that it's tight enough, I'll cut off the thread. Next, I need to do the same along this smaller bit, and I'll start by casting on. Once I've finished and cast off, I now have the front of my boo head. Next, I'm going to take the mouthpiece and sew it up in 3 places. The first is here, the second is here, and the third is along here. I'll cast on along the first edge, and I'll do blanket stitches along the whole thing. The reason I've used white and not red is because the mouth goes inside the boo, so you can't see the stitches really anyway. Now I've finished sewing up this side. Now I'll pin along the next side and sew this one up. And I've finished that side, so it's time to pin up the last side and sew it together. When that's finished, we have this triangular shaped mouth. This long side will be along the top of the mouth, and the other two around the side. Now we want to sew the mouth to the front of the boo. To do this, we first need to turn the mouth the right way around. You can use a pencil to help push out the corners if you need. Now you want to put the mouth inside the front. You want to align this seam from the mouth with this seam of the front. You want to align the other mouth seams with the corners of the mouth and pin. I've chosen to cast on at one of the corners. I'm going to sew all the way along to where the two seams meet, and then carry on around to the other corner, and lastly along the long side at the top of the mouth. Now that I've finished sewing to this corner, it's time to sew the long sides together. And now that I've finished, we can see a sort of smile. We'll push the mouth to be inside out again, and then turn the boo around, and we now have a basic version of the front of our boo. Now we'll put on the teeth and tongue, starting with the teeth. We want to position the teeth along the top side of the mouth, with the middle of the teeth aligned with the seam sewing the two front pieces together, and I'll pin it in place. I'll cast on the inside of the mouth to hide the stitches. I'm going to do a simple running stitch in and out over the teeth. And now I'll cast off on the inside of the mouth. Now it's time to put the tongue in the mouth. You'll want to put the tongue in as far as it will go without folding, and align the underseam of the front to the middle of the tongue. I can feel that the end of the tongue is around here, so I'll cast on and put a few stitches in to hold the tongue in place. I'm going back just to put a few stitches in on this side of the mouth now. And now we have our tongue. Boo heh. Now we're going to start sewing our back pieces together. We'll first pin them. We're going to sew along from this corner at the top here to the tail, and around a bit of the tail, but not all the way along the bottom, and we'll put a stitch in at the bottom corner. This part of the bottom here is going to be used to turn our boo inside out after we have started sewing all of the pieces together. First, I'm going to put in the single stitch. I'm just going to cast on and then cut the thread when I'm happy it's tight enough. Then I'm going to cast on a bit before the base of the tail and do a blanket stitch around. I'm starting with this side so that I don't accidentally get carried away and sew up the hole. Now that it's done, we can see that we have our gap and the rest of the back sewn together. Next, we'll move on to the arms. Get 2 of the arm pieces and pin them together. We're going to sew up along the curved edges, but not up this straight edge here, as this will be used to attach the arms to the body. When we're done, it will look like this, with the open armhole here so that we can stuff it later. And we have 2 identical arms. We want to turn them the right way around. Use a pencil or pen if you're struggling to get the corner bits the right way. Now we can begin sewing the front and the back together. Ensure that the stitches on the front and back are both facing upwards. We'll pin the 2 together. Match the corner of the armholes together and pin. Repeat on the other side. We're now going to sew from this corner over to this corner, not sewing up any of the armholes. The top is now sewn together. We have ended just before the armhole. What we want to do is pin the front to the back just below the armhole. I'm going to take one of the arms, which has its stitches on the inside, and position it like this so that it's curved upwards. I'm going to flip it and put it on the inside. Align the seam of where the front and back join to the seams of the arms. I'm going to sew the front to one side of the arm and the back to the other side, making sure I leave a gap so that I can stuff the arm. I've reached the seam in the armhole, so I'm going to sew the back and front pieces together here. Then I'll carry on sewing around back to the other arm seam. When I reach the end, I'll cast off. Now it's time to sew along the bottom of the boo up to the next armhole. I've again pinned the front piece's seam to the back piece's seam and aligned the armhole edges together and pinned. I've cast on at the armhole and will sew around to the next armhole. Now we've reached the other side of the boo where there isn't an arm. I'll take the other arm and position it upwards and then slot it into the gap here, aligning the seams. Now I can sew each side of the arm to the front or back, again leaving a gap for stuffing. I've finished, so I'll cast off. Now we can turn the boo the right way around. The next step is to stuff the boo. Make sure that you stuff both arms of the boo well, and the tail. You shouldn't put any stuffing underneath the mouth, as you want that to be at the bottom of the boo. Once you are satisfied with the stuffing, you can begin sewing up the bottom. When you're near the end, you can stuff the boo a bit more if needed. Finish and cast off, and we have our finished eyeless boo. Now we want to make our eyes. I included pupils in the template, but it's probably just easier to cut your own out freehand. When you're happy with them, sew them onto the black with just 2 stitches. Repeat with the second pupil. When it's ready, it's time to pin the eyes to the face. Position them where you would like, and you can just stick each pin directly into the boo. When you're done, get some black thread and sew it on. Cast on underneath the eyes to hide the thread. Then just do simple running stitches over all parts of the eyes and eyebrows. At the end, cast off underneath the eye. And here we have our finished boo. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I think the tongue and 3D mouth work well. I also love the face. It has an evil and happy, mischievous look to it. I could have done the tongue in a darker pink, but I do like how the pale looks. If you do want to make your own boo, be sure to tag us on your social media platform. The link to ours can be found in the description. Goodbye for now, and happy boo sewing!
This is our 16th plush tutorial. Have you seen the others? Happy Halloween!